And we are live. Good morning again, Matt.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes. Happy Friday, anyone who's joining us. I'm super excited at this conversation. And my good friend, Matt Ohrt. Matt is the Vice President of HR and Medical Services with Merrill Steel up in Wausau. And him and his wife, Denise, also have founded an amazing organization called Neighbors Offering a Hand, and really passionate about employees and culture and helping the conversations with healthcare in the workplace and safety in the workplace. And I'm excited for this conversation. So thank you for joining us, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Jen and I go back a little ways, probably about 10 years or so. It's actually been a while since we talked because I had moved over from the Valley to central Wisconsin. And so we just reconnected recently and decided to get together and do a podcast or more. So thanks for having me.
Yes.
My wife and I are foster parents, and we jumped into that. We dabbled with it in Oklahoma way back in grad school about 20 years ago. And then we probably weren't ready for it, and then did it for just a few months. And then, but most recently we've done it here in this area about 4 years. So that's been an experience, and we've adopted one already, and we've had 4 newborns, and, as if we're not busy enough, but that's been a fun experience. It's been a challenging experience. So definitely affects lives and has affected our lives in a good way as well.
What a great opportunity, Matt, to influence other people, and especially kids that just need that support system and that guidance, and perhaps that information that maybe they've never had in life before. I really believe that if someone's been raised a certain way, until they learn something new, then they can't do new. So yeah, I appreciate all the work that you and Denise do.
Yeah, thank you. I think, quick comment, but I think sometimes we make it more difficult than it is. Teenagers are especially different. I mean, even, our own teenagers are. That's a time where you're going from childhood to adult. But often what we find is that, it's not some secret formula, but when you just create what I would call a healthy home for a child, and you could translate this to the workplace as well. A healthy home, as in trust, as in caring, as in somewhat of a schedule, hygiene, basic things, So we have one foster daughter now that's about 1.5 years, and she spent the first 9 months of her life in a meth house.
Wow.
And you can just imagine what her normal was like. So we've given her a new normal, and, she cried all the time, and she still cries more than she should, but, we see that dissipating, and her laughing and smiling, and, so, I mean, it's just about trust. It's about love. It's about, sometimes the simple things, right? We don't have to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, it's really, really true. Agreed. And I want to mention, good morning, Angel. Thanks for joining us again. Happy Friday. So Matt, I think staying on that even, and most of my viewers know that right now I've been doing a conversation around fear, and conversations around fear for the next 6 weeks. And I think even in this conversation, looking at your newest foster daughter, fear, I think, hits every age. And I think that even though it maybe manifests differently, I think even at a young age of 1.5 years, there was probably some amount of fear instilled before that switch of households.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a saying, it's a saying. It's probably not statistical. 74.6 of stats are made up on the spot anyway, but they say 90% of what we worry about never happens anyway, or more, right? So, I mean, I think there's truth in that, so often we're fearful of things, but it's stuff that might happen, and it's stuff that never actually happens. So, kind of overcoming that, and just, seeing past that. and not getting absorbed in our own fear.
Right. And staying in the possible of what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I always say problems are just opportunities in disguise, right? So we can focus on the problem, or we can focus on what's past it, but one is way better than the other.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Okay, so for today, we had talked about really. So I think I know we're both passionate about employees and employee health and employee wellness, and how we can really support all of employees in the workplace, no matter what position they're in, because I think that our leaders and our employees, everybody needs that support.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to engage the conversation this morning to talk about how fear impacts employers and employees and performance, and how we can, as hiring leaders and as employers in general, support our employees so that when that fear shows up, what kind of tools and resources we can give them, and what kind of mentorship and coaching we can help them through it.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the things that's overlooked in leadership is, and I've realized this through some resources. Lou Holt's video really had an impact on me. But what I would call caring or empathy, it feels like, and this isn't just a nice to have in leadership. I think any true leader has it, and then no one's really going to give you their best anyway if they don't think that you genuinely care about them. In other words, if you don't care about them, you're just using them to get something done.
Yeah.
So from an employee standpoint, we see employees all over the map, right? Like there seems to be like these extreme views. There's the pandemics could get me, or could get my parents or my grandparents who I'm close to, or then there's another view that this is a plandemic, right? And communism is going to take over, and both of those are fears. They're a very different perspective of what's going on with coronavirus. But both of those create a lot of fear, and then they create a lot of anxiety, and then over time, especially over a year plus, it wears on you, and
right.
It manifests itself in many different ways in the workplace, where you see employees. And that's where I was going with the caring and empathy, is when someone maybe comes and talks with you, or you see them acting irrationally, you don't want to approach them with a handbook or something like, right? I mean,
right.
Show caring and say, where are you at? What's going on? Right. And then you can get an understanding of why they're behaving that way. And you're probably not going to change their mind. I mean, they believe what they believe. And, but just caring about them alone, I think, sets them at ease.
Yeah. And I agree with the perspective of caring and empathy, and just the genuine being the listening of what they have to say. And I'm a believer of even just watching people's tonality. I love just watching people's behavior, because I think often when we watch people and we observe, we can actually see more than what we can hear, and we can see more and understand even more than what they actually say. With that, I think, I tend to find that sometimes people are afraid to say when they're fearful, and especially in the workplace. I think that I've often encountered employees having the perception that if they share, it makes them less than, or if they share, they may get looked at differently for whatever reason. How do you combat that with employees?
If they share how they're feeling, you're saying?
Yeah, if they have a perception that if they share and they're open, I'll bring context. So I've had employees directly tell me in the past that I've shared in the past and I've gotten reprimanded, or I've lost the job over it. Or I think that because of those examples, or because of what other people have told them have been their examples, have led them to not want to share things.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of thoughts when you say that, right? I mean, the sad part of that is that may be true.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to just blast out there, go share everything that's on your mind. And my message maybe would be to filter that and know who you're talking with, and then from a leader perspective, that's maybe my audience on this conversation is, or parent. I mean, we're all leaders in some way. Is that, are you showing empathy? Are you caring? I mean, you can gain a lot of ground just by truly caring. You can't fake it. But the sad part about your statement, I think, is that they're probably right in many cases. And that I always say you can break it down. You can be focused on tasks, right? Which would be kind of that. If somebody was on the extreme side, they wouldn't have a lot of caring. We're here to get a job done, check your feelings at the door, which is impossible, by the way.
Agreed.
We're people. And then there's the other side, which is relationships. Now, you can't be all extreme. You can't just care about people and then get nothing done. That doesn't work either in the workplace, right? But it's probably a fluctuation a little bit back and forth versus some static line or mark on that line.
Right.
But we've got to balance the task that needs to get done. But often, probably more often than not, we're way on the task side, and we forget about the relationship because we need that person tomorrow and the day after and the day after. So if we don't really have a healthy relationship with that person, they're going to get burned out too if they feel like they're just being used. Right. So my advice would be to the leader to just zip it for a minute, listen, and say an empathetic statement of caring back and say, I hear you, man. It sounds like you're going through a lot and I care about you. And how can I help you? Just that statement alone at least shows that you're on that person's side and you're not telling them to hush and get back to work kind of thing.
Right. I agree with all of that, Matt. And there's so much power between just saying the words, I hear you, I understand, or maybe you don't understand. And I think that along with that, there's it can give people comfort in just asking, how can I help? How can I help you here? Is there anything I can do? Or even knowing if there's life things that they have going on, providing them examples of perhaps go to United Way 411, or maybe there's this, or having the tools in the toolkit if there are resources that we can provide.
Right. And you could pick on men. I think there's some funny marriage videos on this, right? But men tend to be not so great listeners. And I'm stereotyping, so me included. But then sometimes we're problem solvers, right? So in the funny marriage videos, but this would apply to the workplace as well. Like we jump in and we want to solve the problem. In many cases, just listening. I'll even go as far if somebody is going through something really tough, I might even say, I hear you, but I won't even pretend to understand what you're going through because I haven't lived that. Now, if I've lived that, I could say, hey, I've lived that.
Of course, yeah.
Right, but not like, hey, just like almost like a surface. I really understand what you're going through. I'm like thinking that's probably not true. Like, actually, I don't. Right? I've never been in your shoes right now, but I'm with you. And I can do that part, but I won't pretend to understand even like, so kind of another level of empathy as that must be really tough.
Right.
And, so I think it often sounds superficial. Yeah, I understand what you're going through. And then the person's like, really?
Yeah.
Right? Your life seems pretty good right now. So
I agree with that. In that, not acknowledging if you haven't literally walked in the shoes because we don't always know. I think another comment that I hear a lot, and especially recently over the last couple of months from employees, is the exact phrase, Jen, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to say something. I was embarrassed to tell you. How do you recommend employers help break that down for their employees?
Yeah, it's a fear, right? It's kind of a social fear. It's not a fear that my health is at risk or even my job is at risk, but I'm embarrassed or I'm feeling shameful. It goes back to the culture, the environment that the leader created. Is it safe to share?
Yeah.
But I think, the healthiest leaders, the healthiest environments at home, at work are ones, and I've learned this far too late in life, probably 10 to 15, maybe 10, but really, feeling comfortable. I always say I've learned more from 35 to 45 than I've learned the other decades. Something about getting old and maturity. But being vulnerable, I think that's a key word. It's in the 5 dysfunctions of a team book, where you take the team from kind of dysfunctional to functional, but a point at which it's safe to share, right? They're not going to eat my lunch if I share.
Yeah.
And then 2, that I actually have enough security in myself, and maturity is probably a good word, to actually share my faults and my weaknesses, or where I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I find, and I'll take off my mask. Now, you have to be wise. You don't just do that wherever and whenever, but preferably I don't have a mask on at all, right? That I can live freely, and I can live genuinely, and not have this ridiculous amount of effort spent that I'm just trying to impress everybody all day. And then at the end of the day, I can be myself. Well, I did that for many years. I think we all do at some point.
Yeah.
But it's not a good way to live.
Yeah. Well, I think to all those points, I really believe that people sense when we're not being authentic, and I also think that people pick up on if someone has an amount of anxiousness, they can also pick up on that, which, to your point, I think that when we do have a mask on, and when we are focused in the wrong direction, then our employees inadvertently respond differently to us. And then it's caused for them to be less open, and it's caused for them to not want to trust to be open with us. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
I have to say, the more open, and most people who have watched any of my content know that even being up on stage, being in live situations for decades has caused me a lot of anxiousness. And even in moments like this, like before we hopped on, like I got that little bit of angst that's still there sometimes right before I go on. And I think that even sharing that with someone, and telling an employee or someone else who's having fear, it makes us human to them. And then they can relate to us and say, oh, really? Jen always looks so strong outside. Well, no, here's how sometimes we all feel this, but it doesn't slow us down, and it doesn't stop us. It means we lean into it, and we do it anyway.
Right. Yeah. The public speaking is a fun one.
Yeah.
When I was really young, I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't even get a breath. And so there's something about just maturing and aging. There was a show on Seinfeld, which I'm not a huge Seinfeld fan. I couldn't tell you all the episodes like some of my friends, but they said that public speaking was the number 1 fear, and then the fear of dying was number 2. So they joked, and they said people are more afraid to speak in public than to actually die.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, but I think that comes as a leader with maturity. It comes with security. It comes with a willingness to be vulnerable. See, and even if we're well-rounded leaders, and even if life's going smoothly, right? It's Friday. I've never had someone had a bad day on Friday, by the way. Walk around and say, how's it going? Everybody's good on Friday. So
Yeah.
I suppose bad things happen on Friday, but Fridays are always easy days.
Yeah.
But if my life, and our life goes up and down and things happen, but if I'm a leader and I'm creating an impression that my life is always great, then I'm actually misleading others, because I've got to be vulnerable, and I've got to share real challenges, not pity party, but once in a while share, hey, I'm going through this and it's tough and I'm struggling with it.
Yeah.
And I think then that makes it safe, because if the leader's always polished and perfect, then even if the person is comfortable, it's still embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I guess I don't have it together like you, so I'm just going to put my mask back on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, vulnerabilities. That may be a whole conversation for another one of our conversations.
Right.
Okay, so staying with fear, staying with employees. When I look to a lot of the employees that I've worked with throughout the years, like I mentioned, there's so much that I've actually visually seen that they've never said. From your perspective, when we visually see someone that it causes us to say, is this person really okay? Or are they just saying they're okay and something's going on? how do you recommend that a leader engage that conversation? Or even I think it can be for even with our kids, right? Like even in other situations, friends, kids, whomever can still have that mask to say, nope, I'm good. I did it for years. Like I'm all good. Um, but watching tonality in people, they're not always, and it says otherwise.
Mhm. Yeah, I think if you don't catch it early, especially then in the workplace, it feels like people turn to drugs and all, and then the problem just gets worse and worse. Sometimes that's their out, or maybe they've had a history of that. But I would say, I always joke and say, the mushy R word. I call it the mushy R word because in business we're here to make money, right? So we don't have time for the mushy R word. But if you can guess what I'm talking about relationships.
Yeah.
So whether it be with my children or whether it be with employees, if I have a relationship with that person before they go through that struggle, in other words, I'm developing relationships all day, every day. It's really cool to do that, by the way. You get to meet new people and you get to learn about things. But if I have a relationship with someone, that person knows I'm not there to hurt them. So they trust me, they'll open up to me, and then we can actually have a real conversation.
Mm.
Or it could be that I haven't met the person. Okay, that's a little bit more of an obstacle. But worst case is our relationship is broken. Uh, so I don't know if there's much you can do in that case. So if the relationship is broken, that means there isn't trust. Trust is the foundation or the glue of the relationship. And then therefore, if I'm coaching you, now you think I'm coaching you, talking about I'm worried about your performance, when even if I'm trying to ask how you're doing, but our relationship has not been good in the past, and I'm task driven, so you're guarded, and we never open up. We never reach that point of what's actually really happening. We never solve anything,
Yeah.
and then it gets worse, not better.
Yeah. I agree with that. Relationships are huge, and even especially for all the leaders who have a lot of direct reports and have a lot of people, there's a way to develop relationships, even if it's limited time, right?
Mhm.
I look to this for me, and I even look to my example when I was going through cancer, and I was going through one of my hardest moments in life, and I look to the employees who I've led throughout the years, and in those times that I've seen them, and often for me, when I've seen someone mask and not want to be vulnerable with whatever they have going on, it comes back to they didn't want to be vulnerable. They didn't want to show weakness. They wanted to be strong or be perceived strong. And one of the phrases that have always helped me is just acknowledging, you're telling me everything's okay, but based on what I'm seeing and how you're responding, it looks like there's something else. Are you sure you're okay? And just almost leaning in and acknowledging that we see them. And for me, that's helped to really break down walls in the past, because people have seen that I'm still watching, and even know that they know that we're paying attention, which I think there's a lot to be said for that. I also I think that sometimes there's signs when someone's struggling. Like for me, I tend to see if someone's performance is slipping, or they're being a little off kilter, or maybe they're normally pretty calm and then they have a angry, frustrated moment in a way that they wouldn't normally. That those can
Mhm.
also be signs that something is awry.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, and people aren't going to, open up maybe right away. So
Yeah.
we have to be prepared for that, right? We can't pressure them and say, "What is it? What is it?" So maybe they're not ready. One of the things I found, and it kind of makes your day go better as well, is, excuse me, my grandpa on my mom's side had a really kind of quirky sense of humor. I think I picked up on some of that. But as I'm walking about the office, I'll joke, my kids are acting up, so I'll tell them to go play in the street like he did, or just kind of silly. Or if
Mm.
someone's walking by and it's 20 below outside, and I'll say, "Are you enjoying the weather?" Just kind of silly stuff. But I found that humor is way more than just a fun comment. Um, that humor, relaxes us. So when we're not tense and when we're not taking life too seriously, then we're way more willing to open up, right? So Matt talks to me and Matt jokes with me when everything's fine. So when things aren't fine, I can certainly go to Matt. Now, of course, then don't joke when someone's really in a serious situation. But there's something about humor that just lessens all that tension and builds trust, ironically.
Yeah.
We're all here at work for 45 years. And so I always say, if we're going to be here, we have to be here, right? So we might as well have a little fun, and we might as well try to do some things, some special things, right? We're here anyway.
Right.
So we can be miserable and watch the clock and say it's only 20 more years till retirement, and then we can die, or we can actually enjoy being here.
Yeah. Have fun along the way. Agreed. Completely agree. So another thing as we talk it through that I think has certainly helped me throughout the years, especially I think for all of us, at some point we changed from being a manager to being a leader. And I think that, to your point, it's maturity, it's time, it's getting out of the whatever we think a certain thing has to be, and just truly being there for people and others and building the relationships, because when we do, essentially everything else grows, right? And for me, I think that something that has inevitably helped me to break down the walls of someone feeling that embarrassment that I mentioned, or that fear that we've been talking about, is giving them control whenever we can. Giving them the option and making sure that we're hearing their ideas, and making sure that we're hearing how they think that they can do it their way, if we can give them that latitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really big on that, and I think that's the secret to influencing others and getting them to come with you, whether it's your children, whether it's a football team, or at work. Whenever I do training, sometimes I'll start off and I'll say, okay, get out a piece of paper. And then I'll say, I want you to write one word on that paper that describes great leadership. And of course, leadership is complicated and can't be done in one word. But if you had to pick one word, what would it be? And then we have discussions around that. I always say my word is involvement. And nobody ever seems to choose that word. It's kind of unique, it seems to me. Now, they'll choose words like engagement, which I think is more of the outcome. But to your point, involvement, see, if I say, what do you think? I think the four most valuable words are, what do you think? Mm-hmm. Because it's real. If you're on the sidelines and you're not allowed in the game, well, then you could become a critic, right? It's like, I don't like the way we did this or that. But if you're in the game, then you're criticizing yourself, and it's not even natural. So I think, plus you have a voice, right? So then it's like, this is our challenge. Now, maybe the leader makes a final call, or, there's still a leadership role there. But the leader's job is to facilitate the input and the best decisions. And 8 people together always make better decisions than one person alone trying to direct 8 people. Plus the decision goes way better because the people are bought into it. So there's really deep waters there in terms of why I believe that. But so many leaders think leadership is taking charge, and I would differ on that a little bit.
Yeah,
they already know you're in charge. You don't need to remind them every minute.
Yeah. Simon Sinek. I don't know if you follow Simon Sinek. He's got a couple great books, but he has a quote, and I'm probably going to not get it right. But it essentially says that as a leader, our responsibility is to essentially the net of it is serving the people that are in our charge, right? It's serving them, and it's being there for them. It's giving them the tools and the coaching and the resources, so that they can grow and be empowered and build. So helping
them, be part of the solution, giving them a reason to get out of bed, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a long career just to take orders all day, especially with half of them you disagree with.
Right.
We've seen amazing results in the workplace. In one instance, we had 10% of the employees on some form of a safety team. We broke it down by electrical and forklifts and so forth, but they were self-directed teams. And in 2 years, we went from being behind on everything and having $2 million in work comp costs to $180,000 in work comp costs. And it was by involving people and giving them the freedom to do what they already do best. So that's really powerful. It's
Yeah,
not just a feel good. It translates to business success.
right. Well, and it comes all the way back down to that people in relationships and really just
Right.
doing what's in the best interest of everyone. So,
Right.
yeah.
Also helps them grow and develop more too. So then
Right.
when you need a leader in the future, then you have a whole bunch of people ready, versus if you just tell people what to do every day, then they're not really growing, right? They're resenting you. So.
Right. Agreed. Well, Matt, this has been amazing. I want to keep my commitment to a half hour. What a great conversation. Thank you so much for the time this morning. And I'm looking forward to doing this again soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, if you are catching the replay later, thank you to everyone who hopped on this morning and get to know Matt. He does speaking events around healthcare in the workplace and some of the amazing things that they're doing out at Merrill Steel and employee and culture. And we will be back again soon with more topics relating to how we can positively impact culture and employees here in the workplace. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good day.
Awesome. Have a great Friday.